The Galactic Council chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Kren stepped forward, his crystalline form catching the artificial starlight. Around him, representatives from 47 species watched in anticipation. This was the moment they had all waited for, the formal declaration of war against the most feared species in known space. "The human problem has gone on long enough," Kren announced, his voice resonating through translation matrices across the vast chamber. "They expand too quickly. They adapt too fast. They refuse to acknowledge their proper place in the galactic order." Nods rippled through the assembled delegates. The Valkyrie representative, a towering insectoid creature, clicked its mandibles in agreement. "They terraform worlds in decades, not centuries. It's unnatural." "Worse," added the Thonian delegate, her blue scales shimmering with agitation. "They make friends with everyone. Even species we've been at war with for millennia suddenly find common ground with these humans." Kren's form pulsed with satisfaction. The plan had taken 3 standard years to coordinate, but finally, the greatest powers in the galaxy stood united. The Zephyrian Empire with their reality-bending technology, the Mech Coalition with their planet-cracking weapons, the Psionic Collective with their mind-destroying capabilities. 47 civilizations, each capable of ending worlds, all focused on one small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm. "Earth must be contained," Kren continued, "before they spread their influence any further." What they called influence, others might call friendship. The humans had an uncanny ability to find common ground with anyone. They'd ended the 1,000-year Trixian-Belusan conflict by introducing both sides to something called football, and somehow convincing them to settle their differences on a playing field instead of a battlefield. They'd turned the cannibalistic Garati into vegetarians by showing them how to grow something called impossible meat. Most disturbing of all, they'd made the emotionless synthetic consensus laugh by sharing what they called memes. "The vote is unanimous," Kren declared as the final tally appeared. "We are now at war with Earth." Light years away, in a small apartment on Earth's surface, Jake Miller was having the worst day of his life. His girlfriend had broken up with him, his boss had passed him over for promotion again, and his ancient car had finally given up on life. He slumped on his couch, staring at his phone as another bill notification popped up. That's when the emergency broadcasting system activated on every screen, every device, every communication channel on the planet. "Citizens of Earth," came the voice of President Chun, though Jake barely registered the name through his exhaustion. "We have received a formal declaration of war from the Galactic Council. 47 alien civilizations have united against us." Jake sat up straighter. This had to be some kind of joke. Aliens? War? "I want every citizen to know," the president continued, "that we are taking this threat seriously. However, I also want you to know that Earth has been preparing for this possibility since first contact 20 years ago." The screen switched to footage Jake had never seen before. Massive orbital platforms bristling with weapons, fleets of sleek ships bearing Earth's flag, underground cities carved into mountain ranges. His mouth fell open. "We didn't want this war," the president said, her voice carrying a weight that made Jake's problems suddenly seem very small. "But if they want to threaten our home, our families, our way of life, they're about to learn why humanity survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars." The broadcast ended, leaving Jake staring at his reflection in the black screen. Somewhere out there, aliens wanted to destroy his world. And somehow, that realization didn't fill him with terror. Instead, he felt something else entirely: a quiet, burning anger that seemed to rise from somewhere deep in his chest. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. Jake stood up from his couch and walked to his window, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed so distant or peaceful. His problems hadn't gone away, but they had definitely gotten smaller. Somewhere up there, 47 civilizations thought they could intimidate Earth into submission. They were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. Humans don't intimidate easily. The first Galactic Council fleet arrived at Earth's outer system 3 months later, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian Empire commanded the assault force 1,200 ships, carrying enough firepower to crack continents. The humans, according to their intelligence, had perhaps 50 vessels and primitive nuclear weapons. What they found waiting for them redefined their understanding of the word primitive. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, voice tight with confusion. "I'm reading. I'm not sure what I'm reading." Vex's tentacles writhed with irritation. "Clarify your report." "The asteroid belt, sir. It's moving." On the tactical display, what they had assumed were scattered space rocks began shifting into formation. Hundreds of asteroids, each one bristling with weapons and engines that shouldn't exist, arranged themselves into a defensive wall that stretched across millions of kilometers. How did they hollow out entire asteroids without us detecting it? Vex whispered. His question was answered by a transmission from the largest asteroid, one that scans now revealed to be the size of a small moon. "Galactic Council Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Park of Earth's Asteroid Defense Network. You are entering Sol System space without authorization. Turn back now, or we will consider your presence an act of aggression." Vex's translator struggled with the human's casual tone. She sounded like she was discussing the weather, not facing down 1,200 warships. "Impossible," Vex muttered. "Run a deep scan on that asteroid." The results made his blood run cold. The asteroid wasn't just hollowed out, it was a complete ecosystem. Hydroponics bays, manufacturing centers, residential areas for thousands of humans. And at its core, a weapon that his computers couldn't even classify. "Admiral Park," Vex transmitted. "Back, you are outnumbered 20-1. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." The human's response was laughter. Actual laughter, transmitted across space for his entire fleet to hear. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but I think you misunderstood the situation. You're not outnumbered 20-1. You're outnumbered." A pause. "Computer, show them." The asteroid belt lit up like a constellation. Not hundreds of hidden bases, thousands. Each one targeting his ships with weapons that made his most advanced systems look like toys. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when his tactical officer pointed at the outer system with a trembling appendage. "Sir, Jupiters. Moons." Vex looked at the display and felt his species equivalent of despair. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, Io, every major moon in the system was moving. Not orbiting, moving toward his fleet with obvious intent. "They weaponized entire moons," he breathed. "Not just the moon, sir," his officer whispered. "Look at Mars." The red planet was accelerating out of its orbital path, its surface bristling with massive engines and weapons that could be seen from across the system. Humans had turned their neighbor planet into the galaxy's largest battleship. Back on Earth, Jake Miller was watching the confrontation from his living room, along with 8 billion other humans glued to their screens. The news anchors could barely contain their excitement. "This is incredible," the reporter was saying. "For 20 years, while we thought our governments were just talking to aliens, they were apparently preparing for this exact scenario. They've turned our entire solar system into a fortress." Jake felt that same burning pride from 3 months ago, but stronger now. This wasn't just human ingenuity. This was human paranoia engineering working together in perfect harmony. While the aliens had spent centuries assuming everyone would fight fair, humans had spent decades assuming someone would eventually try to end them. and they'd prepared accordingly. Admiral Vex stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid had been converted into a weapon of war. The humans hadn't just prepared for invasion, they'd turned their entire star system into a trap. "Admiral," came the casual voice of Admiral Park again. "I'm going to give you 30 seconds to start your engines and head home. After that, we're going to assume you're here to hurt our families." Vex looked at his overwhelming force of 1,200 ships, then at the defensive network that made his fleet look like a handful of pebbles facing an avalanche. "All ships," he transmitted to his fleet. "Retreat. Full retreat." As his ships turned and fled, Park's voice followed them into the darkness. "Safe travels, Admiral. And next time, maybe send a fruit basket instead of a war fleet." The news of the First Fleet's retreat spread through the galaxy like wildfire, but the Galactic Council wasn't ready to admit defeat. If overwhelming force hadn't worked, perhaps cunning would. Master Spy Kel of the Shadow Guild materialized in the council chambers, her form barely visible even to enhanced sensors. "The humans' defensive network is impressive," she admitted, "but every fortress has weaknesses. Let me infiltrate their world, learn their secrets, find their breaking point." Council leader Kreen's crystalline form pulsed with renewed hope. "How long do you need?" "Give me 6 months. By the time I'm done, we'll know everything about human psychology, their fears, their weaknesses. We'll break them from within." Kel's confidence was well-founded. She was the most successful infiltrator in galactic history, capable of assuming any form, mimicking any behavior. She had toppled governments and ended civilizations without firing a single shot. Earth should have been easy. She materialized in New York City on a Tuesday morning, taking the form of a young human female. Her research indicated this was the species' primary hub of commerce and culture. If she could understand how humans functioned here, she could understand them everywhere. Her first day was educational. Within hours, 3 separate humans had offered to help her when she looked confused at a street corner. A vendor had given her free food when she mentioned being new to the city. An elderly man had spent 20 minutes giving her directions to the nearest library, then walked her halfway there to make sure she didn't get lost. "Fascinating," she murmured to herself. "They demonstrate pack-bonding behavior toward complete strangers." Her second day, she made an error. While observing humans in their social habitat at a place they called a coffee shop, she accidentally knocked over someone's drink. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," the human said, immediately apologizing for her mistake. "Let me buy you another one." Kel stared in confusion as the human whose property she had destroyed apologized to her and offered compensation. This made no tactical sense whatsoever. By her third day, she had accumulated 17 random acts of kindness from strangers, been invited to 4 social gatherings, and somehow acquired what humans called friends simply by existing in their proximity. "This is highly irregular," she reported back to the council in an encrypted transmission. "The humans appear to be aggressively friendly. It may be some form of psychological warfare." "Explain," came Kren's response. "They keep offering assistance without expectation of return. They share resources freely. They express concern for my well-being despite having no genetic or tribal connection to me. It's either an incredibly sophisticated defense mechanism or—" She paused, struggling with concepts her species had no words for. "Or what? Or they genuinely care about the welfare of strangers." The transmission went silent for several minutes. "That's impossible," Kren finally replied. "No species that altruistic could have survived their evolutionary process." But Kel was beginning to understand something the council couldn't. The humans hadn't survived despite their altruism. They'd survived because of it. Every crisis in their history had been met not with individual strength, but with collective action. They didn't just help their own kind. They helped anyone who needed it. Her fourth week, she made the mistake of mentioning she was studying human culture for research purposes. Instead of suspicion, she was met with enthusiasm. "That's amazing," said Lisa, a human she'd accidentally befriended at the coffee shop. "I teach anthropology at the university. Want me to introduce you to some colleagues? We love helping researchers." By her second month, Kel had been invited to join study groups, book clubs, and something called a game night. Humans had opened their homes to her, shared their stories, their dreams, their fears. She learned about Jake Miller, whose breakup had led him to volunteer at a homeless shelter. About Maria Santos, who worked 3 jobs to send money to her family in another country. About David Kim, who spent his weekends teaching elderly humans how to use technology. Every story was the same: humans helping humans, often at personal cost. Her third month, disaster struck her mission entirely. She realized she wasn't just studying humans anymore. She cared about them. "Counsel," she transmitted during her monthly report, "I need to extend my mission timeline. Have you found their weakness?" Kel looked around her small apartment, at the photos on her wall of friends she'd made, at the books they'd recommended, at the small gifts they'd given her for no reason other than friendship. "I'm still investigating," she lied, her 6th month. She faced a choice that would define the rest of her existence. Lisa had been in an accident. She was in the hospital, and Kel had the power to save her using Shadow Guild medical technology that was centuries ahead of human science. Using it would reveal her true nature. It would end her mission, expose her as an alien spy, and likely lead to her capture or death. She didn't hesitate. "Kel to Shadow Guild Command," she transmitted as she prepared the medical device. "Mission terminated. Requesting extraction. Status of intelligence gathering." Kel looked through the hospital window at Jake, Maria, David, and dozens of other humans who had come to support Lisa, a woman some of them barely knew. "Humans are dangerous," she reported. "Not because of their weapons or their defenses. Because they'll make you want to protect them." The Shadow Guild's report sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Their most experienced spy hadn't just failed to find human weaknesses, she'd defected entirely. Worse, her final transmission had been a warning to Earth about incoming Council operations. "This is unprecedented," Council Leader Kren announced. To the emergency session. "A Shadow Guild operative has never betrayed their mission. The humans corrupted her somehow," insisted Admiral Vex, still smarting from his fleet's humiliating retreat. "They must have some form of advanced psychological manipulation." But Commander Thale of the Synthetic Consensus disagreed. As an artificial intelligence collective, emotions were data to be analyzed, not experienced. "Our analysis of Agent Kel's transmissions shows genuine affection for human subjects. This suggests humans possess remarkable social integration capabilities." Social integration? The psionic collective's representative, a being of pure mental energy called Prime Mind, rippled with confusion. "That's not a weapon, isn't it?" Thale responded. "Consider, Agent Kel was trained to resist torture, brainwashing, and every known form of coercion. Yet humans convinced her to abandon her mission simply by being kind to her. If they can turn our most loyal operatives, what does that mean for a prolonged conflict?" The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "We need a new approach," declared General Mox of the warrior clans. "Direct confrontation failed. Infiltration failed. Perhaps it's time for the final solution." Every delegate turned toward the far end of the chamber, where a single figure sat in isolation. The Void speakers rarely participated in council affairs, preferring to commune with the dark spaces between stars. When they spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. "Speaker Null," Kren addressed the shadowy figure. "Can your people end the human threat?" The Void speaker's response came as whispers in languages that predated most civilizations. "The humans touched the void between worlds. They showed us ... laughter, We will not harm the laughing ones. What? Kren's crystalline form cracked with stress. That's impossible. The void speakers don't experience humor. Before the humans, this was true. They shared with us something they called memes, we found. Joy ... in these small absurdities. We have learned to appreciate the illogical happiness they create. Even the void speakers had been compromised. That's when the most terrifying possibility occurred to Thal's synthetic mind. What if human friendship isn't a strategy? What if it's simply how they exist? Back on Earth, the population was preparing for what everyone assumed would be the final battle. But Jake Miller had a different idea. We're going about this all wrong, he told the packed community center in his neighborhood. The local volunteer organization had grown from a dozen people to hundreds as word spread about Jake's unusual perspective. How? Do you mean? Asked Maria Santos. She'd joined the group after her brother had been deployed to the orbital defense platforms. Everyone's assuming we have to fight them, Jake explained. But what if we don't? What if we just ... do what we always do? David Kim looked up from his tablet, where he'd been coordinating supply runs to military families. Which is, be human, Jake said simply. The spy they sent Kel, she didn't switch sides because we brainwashed her. She switched sides because we treated her like a person. What if that's our real weapon? The room was quiet for a moment. Then Lisa spoke up from her wheelchair, still recovering from the accident that had revealed Kel's true nature. You mean turn the entire war into a friendship offensive? Why not? Jake's voice carried the same quiet determination that had kept humans going through every crisis in their history. We've got 8 billion people on this planet. The Council has 47 member species. What are the odds we can't find something in common with each of them? Within hours, Jake's idea had spread across the planet's communication networks. Not through government channels or military command, but through the same social networks that had always been humanity's real strength. The Welcome Wagon Protocol was born from pure human stubbornness and a refusal to let others dictate the terms of engagement. If the galaxy wanted to declare war on Earth, Earth would respond by declaring friendship on the galaxy. Within days, every major human city had established first contact centers, not military bases, but community gathering spaces designed to welcome alien visitors. Human artists began creating works specifically designed to appeal to different alien sensory capabilities. Musicians composed songs in mathematical frequencies. Chefs developed fusion cuisine, incorporating edible substances from 47 different worlds. The message was simple and broadcast on every frequency toward Council space. You're invited. Come see what you're trying to destroy. And then humanity did something that broke every rule of interstellar warfare. They waited. Not with weapons ready, but with open doors and genuine curiosity about their would-be enemies. The Galactic Council found themselves facing the most terrifying weapon in the universe, an invitation to be friends. The final Council fleet approached Earth 6 months later, but this time something was different. Ships from all 47 member species filled space around the blue planet, but they weren't in battle formation. They were ... mingling. Ambassador Kren materialized in the Council's emergency command ship, his crystalline form flickering with barely contained panic. Report, he demanded. Sir, came the trembling voice of his communications officer. You need to see this for yourself. The main display showed scenes that defied every principle of interstellar relations. Zephyrian ships were docked with human orbital platforms, their crews engaged in what appeared to be cultural exchanges. Velkari warriors were participating in something humans called sports competitions on converted asteroid bases. Most shocking of all, a group of synthetic consensus units were collaborating with human children to create what the translation matrix could only render as funny pictures with words. How is this possible? Kren whispered. It started small, his intelligence officer reported. Individual ships responding to human invitations. Captains claiming they were conducting reconnaissance, but then ... Then what? The humans introduced them to their families. On the display, Captain Czar of the warrior clans was sitting at a human dinner table, struggling to use utensils while a human child patiently demonstrated proper technique. The fearsome warrior who had conquered dozen systems was being taught table manners by a 6-year-old named Emma. "This is a trap," Kren insisted. "Some form of mass hypnosis." But even as he spoke, his own ship was receiving transmission requests from the human planet. Not military communications, personal invitations. Council Leader Kren, came a voice that translation identified as belonging to Jake Miller, an apparently random human civilian. "We know you're up there. Would you like to come down and see what you're trying to destroy? We've got coffee." Coffee? Kren's translator struggled with the concept. "It's a beverage," his cultural analyst explained. "Mildly stimulating. Humans appear to consume it during social bonding rituals." Through the ship's sensors, Kren could see the planet below. No weapons pointed at his fleet. No defensive postures. Just millions of lights representing human cities, and somehow, the knowledge that each light represented people who had extended genuine invitations to their would-be destroyers. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Psionic Collective's flagship." Prime Mind's mental voice filled the bridge. "Council Leader Kren, I must report a significant development. The humans they've taught us to feel loneliness." "What does that mean?" "For eons we psionics have existed as pure thought, connected to all consciousness. We believed this made us complete. But the humans showed us something called friendship, connections chosen rather than innate. And now when we return to our collective consciousness, we feel ... incomplete. We miss the individuals we've met." Kren's form began to crack under stress. "You're compromised." "No," Prime Mind replied, and for the first time in their species' history, a psionic sounded certain of an emotional truth. "We're enhanced." One by one, reports came in from every member of the Council fleet. The Thonians had discovered music and were collaborating with human composers. The Garati had learned to cook and were hosting dinner parties. The Mechanical Coalition had found kinship with human engineers who appreciated both efficiency and creativity. But the final break came from an unexpected source. "Attention Council Fleet," came a transmission that made Kren's consciousness freeze. It was Agent Kell's voice, but she was broadcasting on human frequencies. "This is former Shadow Guild operative Kell, now legally adopted citizen of Earth. I'm speaking to you from my home in New York City." The display showed Kell in her assumed human form, but she was different now. The cold calculation that had defined her was replaced by something warmer. She was smiling. "I've been living among humans for 8 months now," she continued. "I've learned their languages, celebrated their holidays, mourned their losses, and shared their joys. I want you to know that everything we believed about them was wrong. They're not trying to conquer the galaxy. They don't want to impose their will on other species. They just want to be friends with everyone they meet. And the terrifying thing is it works. Not because they force it, but because they make you want to be better than you were." Jake Miller appeared beside her in the transmission. "Council Leader Kren, this is Jake Miller. We've been expecting you. The whole planet has been preparing for your visit." "Visit?" Kren managed. "Well, yeah, you came all this way. Seemed rude not to invite you to see the sights. Besides, we've got 47 different welcome parties prepared. One designed specifically for each of your member species' cultural preferences." Through his ship's sensors, Kren could see that Jake wasn't lying. Every major human city was indeed hosting massive festivals, each one incorporating cultural elements from different council species. Humans had spent months learning about alien customs, preferences, and social structures, not to exploit them, but to make their visitors feel welcome. The final transmission came from his own crew. "Sir," his navigator said quietly, "request permission to accept the humans' invitation. For reconnaissance purposes, of course." Kren looked around his bridge at crew members who were all staring hopefully at the planet below. In the space of hours, the most disciplined military force in galactic history had been reduced to individuals who just wanted to make friends with their enemies. "This is not how wars are supposed to end," he said weakly. "Who says it's ending?" Jake Miller replied, apparently having overheard the transmission. "We prefer to think of it as just beginning. The fun part." And that was how the greatest war in galactic history ended. Not with surrender or victory, but with 8 billion humans simultaneously declaring, "We're throwing a party and everyone's invited." Council leader Kren materialized on Earth's surface. 3 hours later, not as a conqueror or a defeated enemy, but as humanity's newest friend. The first thing they taught him was how to laugh. The second thing was that laughter, once learned, was impossible to forget. Within a year, the Galactic Council had been transformed into something unprecedented, a genuine alliance based not on fear or mutual benefit, but on the radical idea that beings from different worlds might actually enjoy each other's company. And it all started because humanity's response to a declaration of war was to offer coffee and ask if anyone wanted to be friends. The galaxy would never be the same.